What's up, investors? Chase here on the Note MBA podcast, and in this week's episode, we talk all about some follow-up from last week on the routines and the mid-year goals. We talk all about a couple of different deals happening across the country, and Robby gives David a little bit of tough love. You're not going to want to miss this. Check out this week's episode right now.
That's how I feel about that Atlanta condo. It's like some stupid collectible you keep in your house and you show. I don't know why I have that.
Worst case, you've got a place to stay.
I know Robby has stayed in some interesting places. We've had hostile talk when he's been. Well,
Send me back to North Korea. Send me back to North Korea before I'm sleeping in that.
That's what I was going to say.
First, seconds, performing, non-performing? What the f***? Note buyers, when it seems like you're in this business alone, know Chase, Robert, and the rest of their tribe are at it every week. They're bringing updates from their own note businesses as they work to find, fund, and finish deals. Follow along as they share their grassroots education with you, tuition free. If you'd like to know more about what they do and to download the entire back catalog, check out notemba.com. Now, here are your hosts, Chase Thompson and Robert Woods.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Note MBA podcast, your home for note investing on iTunes. I am Chase Thompson, joined as always by somebody. And today it's again by two of my favorite people, but this time it's alive. Robert Woods, not live to tape. So I am stoked. And then of course, Mr. David Walensky is here as well. It's just good to hear both of you.
I like it.
That's how I like it too, alive.
Sorry, I was actually... I forgot to plug my headphones in before we started, and I wanted to make sure the mic on the headphones is not the one picking up.
You're good to go. Everything sounds great. Very excited. Alrighty, gentlemen.
It's so long since I've had to record one of these shows at home, I forgot how to do it.
It's it's the bicycle eventually, right? That's the analogy. You'll get into it, then you'll be ranting for multiple minutes on end before you stop and go, wait. Let's pivot and, kind of move to something else.
Yeah, I don't think that's been lost on anything. So, man, we've got all sorts of stuff kind of to catch up on. What should we start with, Chase? Any ideas?
Well, so we got a couple things to talk on. Number one, I just want to recap from last week's episode. We've actually had a lot of people kind of email in and or comment on places like YouTube and other places just about our continued efforts on bringing a goals and then mid-year's goal episode. I feel like for not just us, but for the people that listen, it's that recentering that's really helpful, that all of a sudden you look up and you're like, crap, we're talking third quarter, we're talking fourth quarter, how'd the first two go? And you just have kind of take a step back, assessment, and then to be able to move forward. So we got a lot of feedback on that. And I wanted to say thank you to you, Mr. Woods, in person, with the ability of you to answer back about the discussion of routine, about the discussion of how hard it can be to accomplish without that set schedule, without that set routine. And it's like I know it, but hearing the way that you brought it about, hearing other people that you know, like, and trust and respect and all that other stuff say things like, man, here's where it's not a misery loves company situation. It's I'm not alone. And this is a strategy to move forward and all that kind of stuff. That's what was so great.
I can uniquely add two things there. One is a continuation with inside of this episode a little bit on that theme, but then a reinforcing of, what we put out there, we kind of get, because, my whole emphasis was that, my ritual over the last few months is just collapsed and not been consistent. And I've been working on that, kind of breaking down what I had and building back a better routine. And I had mentioned Robert Allen just as part of what he used to call his ritual. And believe it or not, yesterday, I'm on his mailing list, obviously. I got an email from Bob. It's like, my favorite tool for living better and earning more. And he's just sitting in here and he's talking about the one thing that he'd recommend to somebody who wants to be wealthy. And he's like, it's not the cliches of investment strategies in real estate or this new special technique. He said the answer is having a ritual of powerful habits that you do every day. Nice. And this is one of his marketing emails that came out literally just a week after. So it's just another thing to reinforce. And on that note, I would like to say I did much to a marketably level, because I kept track of it, have an improved ritual over the last 6 days since that was recorded and sent over to you, with consistency a little better in my diet and my media consumption, the timing of my day and the gym routine, and kind of getting the morning started. So,
So you're saying it works. It works if you work it.
If you focus on it, it doesn't hurt. We'll put it that way.
There's I was reminded during the show, and then somebody who emailed was wanting an additional resource outside of Robert Allen was a great resource. I think Marshall Goldsmith, I believe is his last name. He's got a great book called Triggers that we've talked about on the show before, but he actually pays a guy, like somebody on his team calls him every day at 10 p.m. And so he's got this list of, call it 7 things that he knows that if he does these 7 things every single day, that he's going to be trending up. Right. And so he actually has a guy that calls him and says, did you do these 7 things? And they're not necessarily generic. It's not like, did you close another account? But more specifically, how many prospects did you try to call? Or, these types of questions. And in the book Triggers, it talks about being able to set those particular levels and then finding an accountability partner so you both can kind of call one another at 10 p.m. at night to check it out. But he has somebody call him every single day to review that list.
I mean, I love getting phone calls from people. I hate when my phone rings. For real? He does it every night.
And it seems like something that would be so VA-able, but then I'm just like, but it's really hard. Even if it's somebody I think that you didn't, I don't want to say you didn't respect, but like you didn't have maybe, they're not like your number one accountability person. It'd be really hard to just out and out lie to somebody. Just be like, oh no, yeah, I nailed that. Next.
But it's like also like, what if you went to bed and you're watching like something on TV at 9:30 and you fall asleep? Like, don't wake me up for this. What do you know? Nah, I'm just kidding.
No, it was just another person he's like one of those guys that's like a CEO's coach. Like the big dogs call him when they're losing, and all this kind of stuff. And it's his strategy. It's the way that he makes it work for himself, which is really neat.
When your third quarter numbers are looking down, you're only a few days into the third quarter, or a month and a couple days in.
Yes, exactly. So essentially, pretty interesting strategy either way. But no, I did appreciate the topic, and I think a lot of people got a lot out of it. One of the first things I wanted to touch on this week, and you could potentially steer us elsewhere if you'd like, but we've actually got some really great videos that will be coming out over the next few days after this show goes live. Any prefaces or additional information you can give to some of us? They're great. It's for those that don't know, it'll be videos that Robby shot while he was out on his extended tour of the country, looking at different assets that both, I believe, aren't all of them ones that are in the portfolio now? None of the videos come from ones that were biddable, correct?
No, they're not biddable, but they're all in different phases.
Yeah, they're all in different phases of the situation. Yeah. So I think there's a lot that everyone can glean from that. I mean, obviously, for somebody that's brand new, there's a ton of obviously verbiage and different things that you can kind of see and learn and all that kind of stuff. Also,
you can see a note investor in front of a house, which, we could see more often.
We don't see enough of. But yeah, I think if you're also a note investor, it gives you an idea to say, we've already had the show talking about the need for getting out and viewing your assets. You can see someone putting together almost a marketing piece, but really just a summary of where your deals are at and things that you can either be sending to your current JVs or just kind of putting out there for the market. Just the really great bets, man.
We'll reinforce it to a different degree of where I was going with that comment, and we'll take it this direction now, Mr. Thompson. Is right before we started this call, I had a borrower call me, and I was actually getting off the phone with GM about my lease. And anyway, so I took the call before we were getting ready to do this. I'm like, listen, I got 3 minutes. Didn't want to not talk to you. It's kind of funny. I wish we had been able to record that phone call, as in we've had some call-ins before while we've been in the middle of the show. In hindsight, I was listening. I'm glad we didn't, because I was listening to a podcast from podcasters the other day talking about some of those times where you go back and you listen to old episodes and you're like, oh God, I sound like that. So I'm kind of happy that it's not recorded. But to be honest to that thought, I kind of want to share what happened. And in the road trip, when I was in the early part of being up in Chicago, I had stopped by one of the properties that I've got note on, and knocked on the door. And, you do the back and forth of trying to, politely get enough information and give enough and do the dance until they realize that you're who you are and it's okay. It makes more sense for them to either talk to you or call or give the information to somebody else. I got a hold of this borrower. His daughter was renting the lower unit. It's a duplex. And it was kind of funny because the daughter's reaction at the time was like, is he not paying a mortgage? So I think she probably said, I'll pay him my rent. And I'm like, I got to talk to him. We'll take care of it. So anyway, I finally got a hold of the guy. They got a P.O. box. He refused to give me his physical address. So I'm like, okay, I'll play the game. I'll send the stuff to your P.O. box. So about 2 weeks later, I call, and he says he never received it. So I'm like, okay. I was like, well, it's been 2 weeks. I figured you would have had time to look at it. I figured if you hadn't received it after a week, considering this is your house, you haven't been paying the mortgage on, maybe that's important. Okay. So I remailed it out to him, and then I also emailed it to him. So this was about a week ago. He just called me, as I said before this, and he said, I got the information. I got your email also. So now the email was sent a week ago, and he just got the physical ones from the P.O. box to kind of help in the timeline. And he goes, I was like, okay. And I was like, well, he's like, so I figured like maybe I'd like to schedule some time to talk to you next week, like maybe Monday. And I'm like, didn't you say you have the paperwork? And he's like, this is the part I don't want recorded. Cause like, I was like, don't you have the paperwork? He's like, yeah. He's like, oh, I'm just real busy. I was like, I respect you being busy, buddy. But I was like, I got going on too. And I'm like, let's just put it this way. It's like, I'm here to help you. That's why we got a hold of you. You haven't seen anything from the attorney. I was like, but come on, man. I'm like, this is you telling me you're busy. This is your house you're not paying a mortgage on. Either you want it or you don't. I was like, but what I'll do, I was like, I'll give you 45 minutes Monday. Let's figure out a time. I was like, if you don't call Monday, this is just, I'm not going to be able to work with you. Like if we don't talk on Monday, because I'm giving you a week. This is on you. Okay. And then we got off the phone. So I saved the time in my phone. I blocked it out, and we'll see if he calls on Monday.
And you're giving him a week, but essentially we're at like a week plus the fact that he hasn't been paying plus the plus, right? I mean, yeah. And it's just game. It's this absolute game that borrowers play, which is, I'm not, I was at a conference, in Dana Point, was the IMN conference. Yep. And I had to listen to, I love this person. He's a great person. I had to listen to him give his line about how our number one goal is to keep people in their houses. I was like, okay, one, it's not. It's definitely not, because you're not a nonprofit. So, no, we want to, yes, as human beings, we want to do well, but people will continually play this game and just bash up against the wall. And then on the other side of it, what's funny, I'll tell you about another thing that happened in Chicago to parallel about why I'm always so giving and giving the benefit of the doubt and doing it is I have another deal up in Illinois. It took a little while to get some paperwork sorted out, and it's on a small condo, but we finally, when we got in contact with the borrower, she's like, yeah, I just want to get rid of it. I don't want to do anything with it. And I'm like, well, we got some HOA stuff. She's like, yeah, I know. She's like, I just don't want, is there anything you can do so I just don't have to deal with it? And I was like, if you'll quit claim it over into this entity, I'll just make sure I don't come after your deficiency. So you might get some stuff in the mail, but I promise you I will handle everything. Okay. And we already got her quit claim back. We got it. It's at the county getting recorded right now. And it's in a third-party entity that, now we have title, so we get the utilities turned on and start doing the renovations. And in the meantime, finish out the foreclosure. That way we're inside of the property legally doing the renovations under an entity that's just a shell company that can do whatever it wants on its own. And we'll foreclose out on it, obviously, and it'll clear out all the other liens. And it also gets her away. She can go do whatever she wants to. And, we're not coming after for any judgments. So it's great. But it's you see that with one person, and then you get some of the other borrowers that are doing it. So it's also part of the game of trying to not get short. Because I also feel bad, like, I don't know if I should have just said, hey, you know what, Ed, I understand you're real busy, but so am I. So let's talk about this on, in the next 2 or 3 days. Let's not wait till next week. I want to be able to start helping you.
But you get so burnt sometimes, you just, I don't want to say I cut my nose off to spite my face in the call, but it's one of those things of like, maybe I should have been a little easier going with him on the phone.
I would speculate, if the call sounded like the call did, that you got to not be the first person he's talked to, first of all. Second of all, I mean, I haven't been in the situation where I haven't had a paid mortgage or rent or something like that. Like, but even as a teenager or somebody who's got student loan debt or whatever, debt's tough. Debt is something that you're always just kind of looming behind you. You've got the commercials of these companies where it's like somebody's like dragging it behind them and stuff like that, right? Because that's how it is. So at some point, somebody had to have gotten to this guy when it was still so over his, it's over his head. He's just like, he's dealing with it. He's like, and he was ready to do some work. And somebody dropped the ball or something happened or kicked the can down the road or whatever. And so I think you're just, the fourth guy to reach out to him, like we find out so often. And I'm not saying you kept the leash too tight, gave him too much. I don't know. But I think that the people that you find in a situation like the lady there, who's just like, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I feel like if I'm in that scenario, you caught me when if someone just called me and said, look, we're going to foreclose on you. And it's just going to it's just going to be off your shoulders. And you caught her at the time when it's just so exhausting to just know that you've always got to look over your shoulder because you're not paying or you're not doing or something's going on and you don't want your friends to find out or your family or a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a spouse. And then someone calls and they're like, I'll take care of it.
That lies the issue of why you kind of have to always be a bit, forgiving.
Yeah.
I had another guy the other day these drives, I'm reinforcing it, and Chase will see it in these videos. The number of new borrowers I spoke to, I don't want this many people having my phone number. I really don't like the fact I got to give this many random people my phone number to deal with them because it will highlight something else in a second. Another borrower in Atlanta, this guy's in a $200,000 house, not paying a mortgage. Comes out, he's in his house coat. I talked to him about it. Okay, well, I just woke up, so maybe we'll talk another time.
What?
I'm like, all right, sure. We'll talk another time. Okay. And you just got to go about it. It's good to make contact, but it's that guy and this guy who needs 6 days and 7 days to look at something who I don't really care to help anymore.
Sure.
And it's like, but I'm internally analyzing if that hurts or helps or when it does and doesn't. And I think statistically, I don't have a big enough number base to answer it. But instead of caring about their individual story at this point, if they're not going to make it easy for me, I need to make it transactional and just remove myself from whatever their story is. Like it becomes irrelevant at that point.
The first contact you make is always the one, right, where you're kind of feeling them out. You're like, what's the situation? What's going on? And a friend of ours, Jay Tenenbaum, who's been on the show before, he, I say famously, but he likes to say whenever he gives a presentation regarding this stuff is he just calls and basically says, how can we help? Or, just essentially getting that shot across the bow and then just not saying anything to figure out where they're at and feel out what it's going to be, what's the situation going to be like? What's this actual transaction probably going to be like? And you're probably going to still get strung along here, or someone's not going to pay there, and it's going to be, but go into it looking to not necessarily be, I'm not saying any of us are dirtbags, but definitely go into it just to get an understanding, shut up, let them talk, and then work through the, whatever you think the potential exit's going to be. And hopefully more of them are like can I just get out of this and what have you, than the strung alongs in house codes, which is just crazy.
We had a tenant in a property up in Illinois that's since been removed from a property, and she's a nice enough gal on the south side of Chicago. I had her calling my cell phone the other day going, Robert, I need to talk to you about something. I was like, okay, what's going on? She's like, two things. I'm like, all right, what's going on, Linda? What's number one? Well, I should have called you 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, okay, what's number one? I saw you 3 weeks ago, remember? And I'm like, yeah, Linda, I remember. I was up there 3 weeks ago. Okay, so about 2 weeks ago, the crackheads just started selling meth off that house down the street you got. And I was like, Linda, I pay you to mow the grass every week and watch the house. Yeah, you're supposed to call me when that happens. So anyway, so they selling meth or some crack or something on your patio. All right, well, we'll deal with that. So he's like, this other thing, I think I need you to figure out what's going on. And she gives me this like 10-minute story about her landlord and how he's shady and does all this stuff. And she's like, and I don't think he's paying his bills. I'm getting some of these letters, like those letters you always send in here. So she sends them to me. And the company foreclosing on her property is somebody I know.
Stop it.
Yeah. So I was just like, I was like, you should call your landlord. Just have a phone call with them.
Oh no. Yeah,
so it's like it's just the beginning filing. It's the original complaint, but I was looking at it and I was like, can you she got her daughter to text me pictures of the complaint. And I started looking at it. I was like, oh yeah, it's like that might be a little bit of a problem, but not for a while. I was like, if he's not mean to you, just stop paying rent and start saving up because you're gonna have to move here soon.
Oh, snap.
So, it's and she's a sweet enough gal, but I'm doing you a favor. You know who? Get one of your tenants out of that property.
Oh
unless
my gosh!
Unless you're gonna sell me that note before that foreclosure finally,
which might be possible.
Then I'll leave her in there.
Well, she's a good enough gal, like you said. That's a great little bit there.
She's a good tenant. So you get that kind of stuff that happens from getting out on the road and seeing this stuff and doing it in volume. I got a call from a friend that's an investor. When I was actually coincidentally going to a closing last week out on the west coast of Florida, and he happened to have a deal in the exact same city, which the odds of me going to that city on that day are about non-existent. So good timing. We went and looked at the property for him and got, kind of an inside scoop on what's going on. And the guy hadn't taken good care of it, but you start finding out the guy's a felon and the background and all this other stuff, and you meet some real interesting characters when you put boots on the ground. Sometimes I gotta polish off this sheen that I put on to look all appropriate in appearance and just be honest with it. Most of these people are idiots half the time, and that's what I struggle with the most. Is I'm like, listen, I'm not the bad guy. I don't want to take your house, but
I just want you to pay your bills.
I just want you to pay the bills.
What's on tap next, Mr. Woods? What would you like to have us discuss?
We got an HOA pulling some sort of nonsense down in South Florida. Let me tell you about this. Boys. And
you with HOAs, are you still with that sort of slightly changed tangent, but are you still doing that HOA in Atlanta, dealing with that fire burn property?
So back to this HOA in West Palm Beach, interrupt me. David, this is a good story. You want to talk about it? We'll talk about it.
No, go ahead.
The HOA is still in bankruptcy. It's still being led by a board full of ignorant people. And now what is a fool? Is his definition of an idiot or insanity when you keep doing the same thing and expecting something different?
I think that's insanity.
Yeah. So I insanely keep diligently paying my attorney and my HOA dues, along with the electric bill and the property taxes, along with insurance on this vacant property that caught on fire ages ago, because I do not have a deck that has been appropriately built and taking care of the insurance. They're in bankruptcy, but this is the big issue. They finally did say that I could build the deck on my own, and they would give me credit for it. The attorney was not comfortable drafting the agreement the way that I wanted it, so that I could basically submit like a $30,000 invoice and build the deck. But the other catch that we really had with it, what I asked him about, I was like, if I build this deck and I consult with the contractor, even with permission of the HOA, will they sign an agreement like releasing me and indemnifying me? And he's like, yeah, but I mean, he's like, there's still some sort of inherent liability by me being the one that individually contracts to put an HOA or put a deck on the exterior of the building, since truly the HOA is responsible for that. So no deck, vacant property. They're in bankruptcy. We still think they're not going to be able to make it out, but who knows? There's no update, which is, it's the same as it was last time. That's just more cohesive.
This is one that we actually have video on. Right? Or is this a different one? This is like a long time ago where you were out and you had the shots of the deck, correct?
Yeah. And I was in Costa Rica. This is 2 years ago. This is like 3 girlfriends or 4 girlfriends ago.
That's an interesting way to tell time. Some do, some don't. No, but we actually have a video. Not only can you go back to like, it's like Atlanta's on fire or Georgia's on fire is the name of the episode, I think. But yeah, where you talk about it, right? Long-time listeners will know exactly what we're talking about. But we also have a video up on the YouTube page where you actually show this deck, if I'm not mistaken. Or you're at the very least standing outside of this property. And I remember putting that up forever ago. God,
it was forever ago. Now remind me, I'm still not making money off of that. You know what I've decided though? Do you know what I decided to justify this behavior? I was just in a bachelor party in the Keys and had a blast. By the way, congrats, Justin. And sometimes you overdo it a little bit, so you need a couple minutes in the bed. And I caught myself watching those 2 pickers, American pickers. They go get antiques and stuff.
Uh-huh.
I just decided I'm kind of like a sign hoarder, but with like condos and low value properties around the country. So like I'm just gonna keep a vacant, place in, and it takes up a little space. I got to pay a little stuff for it, but it'll just sit there. And, maybe in 40 years, some guy will come along and offer me money for it.
Wow.
That's how I feel about that Atlanta condo.
Yeah.
It's like some stupid collectible you keep in your house and you show. I don't know why I have that.
Yes, it's the equivalent of like your grandma's house.
Place to stay.
I know Robby has stayed in some interesting places. We've had hostile talk when he's been. Well,
Send me back to North Korea. Send me back to North Korea before I'm sleeping in that.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, it's if you go watch the video, there's no way. Yeah, well,
no,
do each his own. Do each his own.
No. Anyway,
South Florida.
David, can I go back to my story?
You have my permission, Robby.
David's about ready to get lit up in a second. Actually, I might as well do. I'll talk. If anybody wants to know about the South Florida condo, we'll talk about that next week when David has time. So, David Blinsky. All right, buddy. We're gonna go over a couple things. What,
Absolutely.
2 weeks ago, you were supposed to have your flip on the market, right?
Yes, I was supposed to.
Tell people why you didn't get on the market.
I did not get it on the market. Well, I got sick during the weekend, and that took me out 3 days. And then I had spontaneous roof leaks that happened that are getting patched up, that got patched up yesterday, fixed this morning. And the guy that's literally finishing up the last big thing as far as the knockdown on the patio is coming later today and tomorrow. So pictures will be taken tomorrow and be listed, but that's pretty much been the main reason why it hasn't gotten on the market.
So that's not too bad, but we're going to do an analogy to notes and just kind of reinforce it in different. What do you think your if you were paying hard money in your holding costs, what does that property cost you to hold a month?
Oh,
just off the cuff.
Yeah, I bought it for $180. Let's see, how much are you getting hard money for?
Well, no one tells those things out loud. There's always what I get it for and what you get it for.
Right. So, I mean, let's say a couple grand a month.
Okay, sure. $2,000 a month. So 2 weeks cost you $1,000.
Yep.
Oh man, remember that sale? Remember that sale you called me about the other day?
Yep. I do.
Tell me about that sale. What was it? Airline sale.
Talk about it a little bit. Which sale? Oh, the airline sale, right? Mm. Yeah, the sale. It was a airline sale to Thailand or Bangkok or New Delhi in India, and I believe it was like $400 or $500 round trip, which is an absolute no brainer. So yeah, that could have paid for 4 trips.
Could have paid for vacation.
Could have paid for the entire trip.
Also, that just needs to also reinforce when everybody thinks all these fancy things we do sometimes, like the trail. And it's not that fancy if you just, find the right sale and sell, you get your property listed 2 weeks quicker. So it's not too bad. David, have you finished your ROI calculator?
I have not, no.
Okay, so everybody heard that, right?
Yep. On the podcast.
David, did you get a tape from me last week?
I did get a tape from you last week.
Prior to getting that tape, did you ask me for a tape or did I send it to you?
You sent me the tape. I have not asked you for a tape.
You never asked?
I was complaining about not having tapes.
And did you get tapes from that person that you got the tape from me from?
No, it did not.
And did you look at the tape?
No, I did not look at the tape yet.
Okay. So the lesson here to be learned, everybody, I can't wait for Chase to chime in because I'm going to stop. Doesn't need to be explained by me. Chase Thompson, as an outside observer, will explain the lesson.
So I feel like I am the listener, the average listener of the show here. As I was listening to that, there were moments in which I was screaming to myself. And then there were moments when I was like, oh, man. And then when you were done, I'm like cleaning off my laptop as I sit here, like wiping off surface. No, so there's a lot there. Okay, there's a ton of stuff there. There's a lack of action, which we've all fallen ourselves into, right? There's a lack of commitment or routine or different things, and I mentioned it in this week's weekly email that comes out every Monday, unless I'm in the middle of moving my family. That I will be the last person to preach at someone. So when I say these things, I just mean them from the perspective of you see yourself in other people, and the opportunity that was before you in the tape given or the here's my ROI calculator, guys, can you look at it? Or any of these other random things. The opportunity to go to buy a ticket for round trip that then you missed out on for the week long and the sick and all of that. You need to capitalize. It's the pitch that comes down the middle that is like your zone. It's in, you know what I mean? Like that's where you swing and that's where you hit it out of the park. And that's what you need to do. It's not a negative connotative conversation to me. It's all of those things still exist, right? There's always going to be another opportunity for a travel deal. There's going to be a deal that you absolutely capitalize on and you crush and you don't wait a week on it and this, that, or the other. Obviously we're still here to check out the ROI calculator. The tape still exists, though some of those deals are probably gone, if not, depending on, I don't know what the timeline was on this tape, and there will be another tape, right? So I take it all in the positive stride.
So here's the best thing about it. Dude, I have a list a mile long, the exact same thing.
That's what I'm saying.
Of stuff that could have been done. It just wasn't. And it's not a bad thing. But I have just been beating myself over the head about, like, I didn't get to this quick enough, or didn't do this, or didn't do that, or this felt it. But the other part of that, too, is kind of managing two aspects on it. What you take on and where you put it in kind of a weird way. I was joking with Kimberly before I got off the phone. I'm like, you know what? I was like, I built way too much house last year. Way too much house. I was like, city came along and they said, hey, Mr. Woods, you didn't have a permit. You need to spend the next few months tearing that shit down. And then when you go fix your foundation, you can build some more stuff. But in part of that is like, okay, it's no big deal that you don't get to that stuff. People stress about they need more notes or more deals. There's going to be another tape next week. There's another tape in my inbox. There's another 10 tapes in my inbox. It's figuring out what we want to focus on it and why. And part of it is also objectively saying, well, why did I not prioritize this or why did I not do it? And for me lately, it's just to be honest and say, hey, that hasn't been important. And that's okay. Even when there are things that are on my list that I want them at the top, and I feel like they should be important, or we put too much importance on them. In reality, that other stuff. I mean, your bills are paid. You're not hurting for money. You got food. You got a roof. You got a nice car. You got clothes on your back. You know, you've got friends and family. You know, the fact that you didn't look at notes last week is nothing. It's inconsequential to your true ability to be happy. But, you know, where I was going with that stuff is we beat ourselves up on that stuff. And sometimes it's appropriate. Now, did you tell me, or did you have any expectation or any, you know, something you had said to anyone outside of yourself that you would have felt responsible for, of the fact you didn't look at that tape?
I did not tell anybody that. No.
Yeah. It's one of those things.
Any accountability. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that so often with our goals from the episode we talked about last week, we give ourselves extra desires that are goals, and then we've just yet to figure out how to make ourselves accountable for them to that actual higher level of bringing them into reality.
I don't know if either one of you read the email that I put out on Monday about last week's episode and about exactly what you're talking about, Robby. But I essentially said that the self-awareness is hard. And oftentimes if you look at a habit or a behavior or whatever it is you're trying to fix, and you've been trying to fix it for just long enough where you realize, I can't fix this on my own. And you can either choose to do what a lot of people do, which is dig in their heels and say, no, I can do this on my own. I just need to try harder or work harder or find more hours or wake up earlier or stay up later or whatever the case may be. And you essentially, you break through somehow, or you end up just taking a couple of turns around the block and then ending up at the same intersection where this thing that you're trying to do, quote unquote, isn't done. Or you stop and you go, no, I need help with this. Doing this on my own isn't that. And I'm going to tell you that the best part about that whole accountability bit that just happened was that when I was 23, 22? David?
21.
He's 21. Of course you are, because that's even better. When I was 21, I didn't have the guy that said, whether I asked or not, from an accountability perspective, I didn't have anybody looking over my shoulder like that. In fact, I didn't have anybody like that really until I got into this business and met Mr. Woods. So I'm not saying that everyone needs to now have his phone number and call him about situations as we discussed earlier in the show. But what I am saying is the best thing about that whole conversation is that you're 21, add 12 years of having that groundwork. I'm not saying he's always going to be your accountability buddy, but what I am saying is having that groundwork laid. I'm looking at that and I'm just like, damn, man, what's my life with 12 years of that? And it's awesome. Show you. That's my point. Go and do likewise, gents. Go and do with the 12 years of that. That's what I took away. That was incredible.
Exactly. Yeah. So I have absolutely no excuse as to the stuff I haven't done. But like you said, it's all right. It just means I haven't prioritized the way that I probably not so much should have, but it's just the way I haven't prioritized. Also, the good news. This week. What was that?
You heard me. Anyway, go ahead.
I got you. But the good news is that I have, moved in the right direction as far as like what you were saying. I'm spending all my time on the flip instead of outsourcing and, valuing my time. Like that's $1,000 a week. Would it be better to spend on a contractor and get it done so I can focus on the more important things, like focusing on the notes that I want to do and that kind of stuff? Or do I keep wasting my time? But the good news is I did find a contractor for the second flip, the last flip I have going. So that's going to be taken care of there. And then this one's getting enlisted tomorrow. So.
Well, I like it. So we got some progress. We got a bunch of rentals. I'm working on this rental refi project. So that will be interesting.
Rental refi, like you're refinancing your rental portfolio, or your
Yeah. So I think with growth, maybe this is kind of what I said of, is it quantity or quality? And I used, at a point in my investing career, $50,000 homes were quality. They were what was right for the budget. And we've, amassed enough of those. It's now time to get rid of those and focus on larger projects. So I'm refinancing those out so that I can regain that cash and capitalize it into some of these multifamily projects. So working on that. What else we got? To David, to what we were saying, where I was going with that in a different perspective of why I was talking about the rental thing is I've added this, I need to refinance rentals. It's more projects. And I've talked to people about it, but I haven't actually started doing them as fully as I've really wanted to. But, I'd had that Kansas City project on my goals to do for ages. And because of what came up, it made more sense for my buddy that I was partnering with the land. The land went ahead and was sold. And at some level, that turned into a much better thing because he was like, when are we going to start this project? When are we going to start this project? And I was like, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. And as a result, what came up turned out to be something completely different than a project, but better and freed up some time. So I don't know, we've got a list of that. What else are you working on, Mr. Thompson? I'm looking at the rest of my notes here. I'm going to save these for next week.
Yeah, I just have a deal that is coming off, I guess, the books, as it were. I was going to talk about the numbers on that. We're pretty close to the end of.
You have them all tightened up, or is that a good one to go over next week?
It's a better one to go over next week, just to make sure I have all the final bills in, and I can give it like a real good accounting of. It wasn't anything fancy. It wasn't anything crazy. It was fairly straightforward, but it's a good deal. It's a good deal to talk about. There are some educational pieces on it and potentially a conversation I can have about Richmond Monroe about it. So that would be fun.
All right. Well, we'll do that, and I'll talk about that West Palm condo, and hopefully I will have seen it by then. I've seen the inside. I saw the outside and realized it was vacant, and we got some locks getting changed and a reconstruction quote we should have for next week's show.
I do have a question for you real quick before we close out as an educational piece for myself. What do you do, Mr. Woods, because I haven't really encountered this too much yet, when you have a boots on the ground, you got an agent in an area that has been good on other deals. They're great, in terms of experience that you've had with them. But on a deal right now that you're in the middle of, you're trying to bid on a property, and they just won't go look at it for you. Like, for some reason, they're just dragging their feet so hard. But they've been a great agent. There's a lockbox on the outside of this is a prime deal for them to go look at. Well, do you just have a tough conversation with them and just go, hey, man, what's up? Is life just sucking right now? Or have I not given you enough referrals? Or, how do you maybe manage that?
I guess I have to answer your question with a question, though.
Yeah.
How much have you called them to make them know it's important? And outside of doing deals with them, have you shown them that they're important to your business?
Yeah, I think, this is an agent that's gotten a gift. This is somebody that,
No. Then, maybe you got to get somebody else on it and give them a shot.
Okay.
And then, you just got to now you got two horses in a stable. Maybe that's what you need to tell her.
That's what I should have maybe had in the first place. Well, I appreciate
you went a
feedback.
little lame on me. I, wanted to make sure we could get everything harvested this year, so we went and picked up backup. So you know what? Good on you. You only got to do half the work next year.
I don't know if this particular agent, this female agent, is going to appreciate a livestock reference, but I will nail it home. I will mail it home. We'll make it work. Thank you.
Give that to them, maybe.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Just don't tell them. Maybe, and then you say, oh, yeah, I got this other listing over here. And they're like, well, why is that? And I was like, oh, yeah, you remember that time you weren't able to make it out to 123 Main Street? Well, Joe went out, and Joe really did a heck of a job. So I made a few bucks. I owed it to Joe to give him another shot.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Gentlemen, thank you so much as always. And everybody, thank you so much for listening to the show. Everything we've talked about today will be in the show notes over at notamba.com. As always, if you haven't already, head over to iTunes, give us a rating, give us a review, give us a rating. We were just talking about how many listeners we have to the show and just how few ratings we have. We would love more 5-star ratings over on iTunes. And as always, be sure to tell 5 other people you know this week about the Note NBA podcast. Catch you guys next week.
Adios, gentlemen.
Thanks, everybody.